Happy morning, dear friends. Here's yours, Dr. Ajanta. Welcome to day 45 session. Today we are just going to discuss about Python exceptional handling. And we are just going to discuss how to handle exceptions in your Python program using try, except, and finally statement. And let me just explore it with some examples. First, what is exceptions in Python? See, an exception is an event which occurs during the execution of a program that disturbs the normal flow of the program's instructions. In general, when a Python script encounters a situation that it cannot cope with, it raises an exception. And an exception is a Python object that represents an error. Dear friends, see actually Python has many built-in exceptions that are raised when your program encounters an error, that is something in the program goes wrong. So when a Python script raises an exception, it must either handle the exception immediately, otherwise it terminates and quits. So when these exceptions occurs, the Python interprets, stops the current process and pauses it to the calling process until it is handled. If not handled, the program will crash. For an example, see here, dear friends, let us consider a program where we have a function A that calls function B, which in turn calls function C. So if an exception occurs in function C, but it is not handled in C, the exception passes to B and then to A. So if never handled, an error message is displayed and our programs comes to a sudden unexpected halt. Okay, let me know how to catching exception in Python. See here, dear friends, in a Python, exception can be handled using a try statement. The critical operation which can raise an exception is placing inside the try class. So the code that handles the exceptions is returned within the except class. So we can thus choose what operation to perform once we have got the exception. Here it is a simple example. Kindly have a note of this, dear friends. In the example here, the first one operand is an integer and the second one is a string. So we could change it to any other thing, whether it can be an integer or a float or anything that it add it with the number to make it work. And let me just make it, see here we are just making an execution where without any changes the second block expect will be executed. How come this happen is it just making an possibility of adding this 10 with a string, as it is not possible, it just throws an go for an except and it executes it. So, okay, fine. So, this is a simple imaginary. So, you can just change it to integer or any other float so that it can work it. Or if it is not working, it just has to throw some error message. But here we are just passing it a simple message. Okay, let me just move on to the second program. See here, dear friends. In this program, we loop through the values of the random list. As previously mentioned, the portion that can cause an exception is placed inside the try block. So if no exceptions occurs, the expect block is skipped and normal flow continues for actually for lost values. But if any exceptions occurs, it is caught by the except block, that is first and second value. Okay, let me just here I execute it and I describe it further. See here, so here what it just do, here we print the name of the exception using the x info. Okay, so this exact function inside the sys model. So we can see that a causes that are causes of here we are just getting a value error, and where it one more thing just causes an zero division error. So since every execution in Python, it inherits from the base exception class, we can also perform the above task by one more way. Let me just make it in the third example. Kindly have a note of it, dear friends. See what we have just made it. I just simply scroll to the top above. See here. So in this exact way, we have just done accordingly. That is to the error, we have just made an entry of where this exact class happens, and here we have included this one. Okay, so this exact module which it just get type of execution, and then it would make. So here we have just made use of the execution of info, where that execution of info, it just thrown a value error and zero division error. And when I'm just making here with the class, see here, dear friends, it just gives us the execution of it. I just show you what is the executed output. See here, first the class of value error, same, it just occurred, and when I'm just passing to the second, yeah, again it thrown a zero division error, and at last it just entered the 2, and it shows that reciprocal of 2 is 0.5. So this is how you can just make use of some functions, and you can just import some modules to make it work. Okay, dear friends, let me just make here by using an example. See, we are just going to make use of this expect block. So I just execute and let you know. See here, dear friends, here I just want to make an user input. Here it is, so, and I just gone. Okay, let me just make it 26. Okay, something went wrong. What here it is, see here, dear friends, in this above example, the exception block will run, and we not know exactly what is the problem. So to analyze the problem, we can use the different type of error. What are all the errors? Yeah, let me just make it in the example 5, and see what are all the errors that can be handled. But here, when on execution, as it is not known what it is, it just goes for the except block, and it throws the execution of the print statement that something went wrong. Okay, let me just give here. See, dear friends, if it is an error of a typo error, it can specify the typo error, or if it is a value error occurred. See here, I have just specified 19, it is of 1926, and it can be of the age when we just make it born, which we have just specified here. So here, if we are just specifying something more than the 200 or anything, so it just shows some errors. And here, when just giving some zero division error, if you are making some division with 0, so that time here it makes an error. Okay, fine, dear friends, let me just give an error that one by one. Okay, here I just want to add my name. Here it is, so, and year you were born. Okay, I just give the same okay, 19 okay, 26. And here a type error occurred. Type is what is the exact type when you just make use of this 1926. Okay, anyhow, I just execute it again, and I just provide you one more execution here. Let I just give 1981. And here also the type error occurred, where what is the type is in the sense, here it is 2022, and what is the year you are born, that gives you in the value of number, and you are just going to make use of that. And your ages, here it has to come that in a value, and your edit it has to specify, but here we are just getting typo error occurred where we have just done something error wise. Okay, and now I just want to know what is the exact error and how we want to catch by specifying the exception occurred in this Python. See, actually, in the above example, we did not mention any specific exception in the except class. Okay, so this is not a good programming practice as it will catch all exceptions and handle every class in the same way. So we can specify which exceptions an except class should catch. So a try class can have any number of except class to handle different exceptions, and however only one will be executed in case of an exception error. And see here, dear friends, a try class can have any number I have just specified here. And let me just make use of an execution by using the code. See here, it is the one where you can just give something to make it a try, and we are just going to pass it. And if it is a value error, here it is just going to make use of that value error handling. And if it is typo error or zero division error, here it just goes on, and defaultly if nothing happens it just goes to the except block. And anyhow at least one it has to be executed, whether it is a value error or a typo error or a zero division error, or at least some other errors it has to be passed on. Okay, if it's so, how we can rise it? See, actually, in Python programming, exceptions are raised when error occurs at runtime. We can also manually raise exceptions using the raise keyword. So we can optionally pass value to exception to clarify why that exception was raised. So kindly make use of this one. See here, dear friends, when we just make use of this rise keyboard interrupt. So actually, if anything, if you want, it just makes use of that rise keyboard interrupt. So here you can just make use of anything. If you interruptly just key pressed on to the top keyword, it has to rise a keyword where we can specify keyboard interrupt. Or you can just also specify some message like that, what is the exact error. Okay, for that here we have just specified this is the exact error, and this information you are just commenting for the user or for the developer who just makes the program. So let me just make this see here, dear friends, this memory error it should comes here, and how you can just raise the exception and with a message here specifying this is an argument. Okay, and see here, dear friends, if you just want to make use of that in a try, see here, if I'm just making, if I want to get an input from the user, and here I'm just getting it. If it is a positive, it is just showing, going to show, enter a positive integer. And if you just provide any positive, it's just going to print the exact value, and it's just moving on. Or if it is any negative, this is not a positive number, that is the exact error I have to specify, and it should be a value error. Okay, let I just execute it, dear friends, kindly have a note of it. So enter a positive integer. If I just specify -4, what it just shows, this is not a positive number. And see here, if I just want to throw it within a positive integer, it just executing it and moving on. So in some situation, you might want to run a certain block of code if the code block inside try ran without any errors. For these cases, you can use the optional else keyword within the try statement. And see here, kindly dear friends, just have a note of it. Exceptions in the else clause are not handled by the preceding except clause. So when on just making that else, it was not by the preceding. So here I just specified an example. And when I'm just making, for an example, if we are just making an hello world program that is written and we are ready to run the program, and we will use the python 3 command along with the name of our program. So let's run the program. How come we can just make it? And see here, if a single try statement that can have multiple expect statement, excuse me, so this is useful when the try block contains statement that may throw different type of exceptions. So you can also provide a generic exception class which handles any exceptions, or after the except class you can include an else class, or the code in the else block executes if the code in the try. So block does not rise an execution. So the else block is a good place for code that does not need the try, that is blocks protection. So there we are just making use of this else. Okay, dear friends, let me just make use of an example with the else and we make use of it. So see here we are making use of an test file .txt. Okay, and what we are just giving is, this is my test file for exception handling, and expect IO error, which it just shows, yeah, error, can't find the file or reading the file. So here, if it is not making any sense, it just goes on to the else and it shows, yeah, written content in the file successfully, and going to close the file which is open. And see here, this is how it just makes. So here how this try is, if any error even though occurred, or if it is not going for this first IO error, directly it just jumps onto the else and it just executes it and it just closed on. Okay, and okay, fine, let me just make it with one more example. See here, dear friends, here we are just what is the exact is, we want to pass an odd number. Okay, here it is just going to get an input from the user, and if I just making an odd number, okay, 1, and it just say, yeah, it is not a even number. And if we pass an even number, the reciprocal is computed and displayed exactly here. Okay, so the reciprocal is equal to 1 by num, and it's just going to print it. Let I just execute, dear friends. See here enter a number. Let I just make 1. Okay, what it just shows, yeah, it is not a even number. Okay, fine, let I just execute the same 12 cell again. So now I'm just entering 4, so it is a even number, and it just shows, see here, so it just shows the reciprocal of this 1 by 4, so it just prints 0.25. Okay, here what I'm just going to do is, okay, here I'm not going to enter any that is odd or even. Let I just make it 0. Okay, and if we pass 0, what we just get, 0 division error, as the code block inside else is not handling by the preceding except. It is not handled by this. So there, here we just get the error. And you can also use the except statement with no exception as defined here. See here, in this kind of try except statement that catches all the exceptions that occurs. So if there is any exception, then execute this block, or else if there is no exception, then execute this block. So using this kind of try except statement is not considered a good programming practice though, because it catches all exception but does not make the program identify the root cause of the problem that may occur. Okay, dear friends, and you can also make use of multiple exceptions. See here, we have just given a simple statement, the same, except it has just going to handle multiple exception, and exception 1, exception 2, exception 3. And see here, for each and every separate exception, if it is given an explanation or description, yeah, it would be fine. But if it is not going to make any particular sense, yeah, here also it is not of good programming practice, but though it just catches all the exceptions but making it into a multiple in a single statements. Okay, dear friends, let me just conclude to the day of this functions, and let me just discuss more on to the try and finally classes in the next session. Thank you. Bye. Take care, dear.